what I'd like to do now, fill in a little blank that we started earlier. Fernando Guerra, who is a longtime friend, he's a demographer, professor at Loyola Marymount, all-around good guy. You don't want to make a bet with him on election turnouts because inevitably you lose. I still owe him a dinner, so I thought I'd get there before you did. But he knows his numbers, he knows his stuff, and he's got some interesting stuff to share with us this morning.
Hey, Fernando.
Thank you. Thanks, Richard. I got a couple of slides that we're going to put up here. It's all about how the perception that the Valley has about transportation. Two quick points on demographic shift. Number one, that we hypothesize at the Center for the Study of LA that there's been no greater ethnic shift in a region of over 1 million people without a natural catastrophe or a war than in the San Fernando Valley, and what it has witnessed in the last 20 years with the transition of Latinos and the changing demographics in the Valley. It is a very unique region for that reason. And of course, there's a lot of uniqueness in terms of the region. What I'm going to present here is some data from our annual survey. At Loyola Marymount University, we conduct the largest general social survey in the region. It is county-wide, and it is large enough, and we have over 400 respondents in the Valley that we could talk just about the Valley. So we can compare the city of Los Angeles to the county of Los Angeles. We can compare the rest of the county to the city of Los Angeles. And then within the city, we can compare the metro region to the Valley. There's never really a good name for the rest of the city. We have the Valley, it's pretty well defined, but we just call the rest of the city metro in these slides. So we can go to the next slide. And here we ask, is the city or the region going in the right direction? This is a region, so this is really county data. It includes all 2,400 respondents countywide. And what you can see is that we're asking about the region, the county, that the people in the city, the metro section of the city, 72% believe the city is going in the right direction. In the Valley, 69%. I wouldn't really, given the difference, wouldn't focus so much on the difference, but how optimistic both people in the Valley and in the city are about the region in the city of LA. The next slide is just about the city of LA, and it's a little bit higher positive in terms of going in the right direction. And then the next slide, this is what's really interesting to me, is that we're asking about neighborhoods here. And here, people in the Valley feel their neighborhood is going in a much better direction than the rest of the city. And you can see the difference between region, city, and neighborhood. The closer you get to where you live, the better you believe that you're going in the right direction. And that's because you see the changes, you feel it, you live it. The county and the city tend to be a greater abstraction for people. But in the Valley, 71% of the people in the Valley believe their neighborhood is going in the right direction. This survey was conducted in January of this year, 2015. We conducted a similar survey in 2014, and we're in the process and we'll be conducting another survey in January of 2016. But definitely people in the Valley believe in their neighborhoods, believe that's going in the right direction. Next slide. Do you consider yourself an Angelino? Whatever that means. Now, obviously, more than half the time we ask that question, people say, what do you mean? And we respond, and our interviewers respond, whatever it means to you. And you can see that in the metro section, 86% of the people consider themselves Angelinos. In the Valley, 77%. What's interesting about this is that we ask this question of everybody in LA County, and throughout the county, whether it's in Burbank or the city of San Fernando or San Gabriel or Long Beach, the answer is about the same as it is in the Valley. About 77% of residents in LA County outside the city of LA consider themselves Angelino. To me, that's an incredibly optimistic and unifying message, that it's that high, that identity that we have, that we're beginning to build an identity called Angelino. Again, whatever that means, and we need to further define that question. Next slide. Then we ask, how would you rate traffic or mobility as a whole in the city of Los Angeles? And here you can see a big difference between the Valley and Metro. Okay? Again, we have over 400 respondents just in the Valley. So these are pretty good, valid numbers. I would even say that given that we've done this 2 years, and we're going to do it the third year, we are now calling our survey the largest continuous survey of the Valley that is being done. And you could see that 61% of people in the Valley believe that they rate their mobility and traffic as poor compared to 42 in the rest of the city. Okay, next slide. How would you rate public transportation as a whole in the city of Los Angeles? Here we're talking citywide, so even though, again, the Valley rates it poorer, but they could also be talking about how transportation is in the rest of the city. So it doesn't really get exactly, we're not asking people here, how do you rate transportation in the Valley? We're asking them to rate it in the whole city, okay? Next slide. And then main mode of transportation to work. You can see the drive alone, but you can see the differences and some great differences between the Valley and the rest of the city that you can go down the line. I won't take the time to go through all of those. I know that Richard catch mopeds to work, and so I see that. Okay, one more slide.
I'm at point two, right?
Okay, yes. This is the same one that was on the top. I just wanted to highlight it again, that in terms of driving alone to work, that 77% of residents in the Valley drive alone to work. Only in the rest of the city, it's only 63%, which again calls for some alternatives that we need here in the Valley. And then finally, the average commute time, and this is kind of interesting, it's actually higher for the rest of the city in terms of the shorter amount, which kind of makes sense. And you can see that the longer the commute, the greater it is for the Valley until you get to the 90 minutes. And then the Valley goes high again. All right. Some interesting data there. And then one more slide, and that's it. We have all this data. We'll make sure that we give it to the organizers. If any of you want to take a closer look at it, we can cut the data, of course, by ethnicity. We have all kinds of other data on other social issues, and we welcome the dialogue and be able to participate. Thank you.
Fernando, before you. Fernando, who experienced the long commute this morning, so give me your interpretation of the data. I mean, what does the data tell you about Valley commuters, their willingness to try different, I mean, how do you see it?
I see the Valley residents, in terms of public opinion, being about where the rest of LA was in about 20 years before we had all this great, 20 years ago, before we had a lot of great transportation hit the rest of the city of LA and all the different alternatives. And so if we would have done this survey 20 years ago, the basic answers you're getting at the Valley you would have gotten from the rest of the city. And it's all about that a lot of the investment went to the non-Valley section, and that we can get people and their behavior. So a lot of this was public opinion, but we also asked about behavior, and you can see a difference in behavior, and we can begin to change behavior in the Valley if, of course, you make the investments.
So you see,
Stephanie will be mad at me if I said something. So the Valley's 20 years behind everyone else in getting the dollars for Metro and all the predecessor agencies, but I won't say that because Stephanie was kind enough to be here this morning. But you see a willingness, where's that, Hertzberg? Yeah. A willingness among people to try something alternatives if they're provided for them.
Absolutely. The other thing that dovetails to this very importantly is the optimism in our surveys that just radiates in the Valley. People are incredibly optimistic about the direction of the Valley and the city and the region, and they're optimistic about Los Angeles as they've never been before. This is a great time. You know, the number one investment, obviously we're talking about infrastructure, but the number one investment is in people, and an optimistic people is even more of an asset, and you certainly have that right now in the Valley and the rest of the city.
Councilman has a question.
Fernando, can you go back to your last slide for a second?
Sure.
The length of commute time.
Yes.
Am I reading this correctly, that 40% of Valley commuters have a commute of less than 15 minutes?
That's correct.
And that 70, almost 80% have a commute of less than 30 minutes?
That's correct.
So that tells me that
Now, these are not necessarily workers. Remember, this is residents, so it could be people who are just commuting, you know.
to school.
Yeah, right.
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 But most of those then presumably are living and working, or living and going to school within the San Francisco Valley.
That's correct. That's a good assumption to make, but we don't have the data to clearly say that's definitive.
So most of those commuters are, if we're gonna get them out of their cars, are gonna be better served by better bus service probably than, long rail lines.
That could be an interpretation.
All right, thank you.
Fernando, thank you very much. Appreciate your coming out. It's good stuff. We'll make the dinner somewhere in between where you and I live. How's that?
As long as you pay.
Okay. Yeah, that was the bet. That was the bet. Paul, the one thing we don't know is how many miles that commute is. It could take them 30 minutes to go 1 mile or 2 miles in parts of the valley, or it could be all the way across the valley. So we don't have that skew in there in terms of. it's like- no, I agree with you. Yeah, no. No, I think, it orders for a robust bus system, more and more rapid transit, or along the lines of north-south dedicated.